Hello everybody, welcome to the new episode of AZ Security. My name is Dion Paardenkoper. I'm working as a security cloud architect at IT Impressive, and today we have a new topic around the best practices of Graph API. I have a special guest. His name is Harm. Harm, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, good evening and thanks for having me. My name is Harm, my last name is Veenstra. That's too Dutch to pronounce for most people, but okay. I'm a identity consultant at InSpark and I do things around identity, Entra, a lot of Exchange still. And I'm a Powershell MVP and I blog at Powershell as fun, like we see in my signature. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, mostly if I see in your name, it is with PowerShell. So, and we also saw each other at the MVP Summit this year, and it was great having you around. So awesome that you want to participate here. For today, you want to talk about best practices, right?
Yeah, best practices, but also in discovering how you can use Entra Graph interfaces with least privilege, because that's the best practice, and how you can make sure you're actually accessing the right endpoints using the best methods, etc. It's becoming common practice. You can't get around it. You have to do everything with Graph.
I totally agree. Do you want to share something?
Yes, okay, I can see that I'm sharing my screen now. Graph Explorer, probably familiar for most people. It's a nice way of kind of graphically exploring your Entra environment and your services within it. And for example, if you do something connected to my own tenant right now, so not that many users in that directory, run this query, show all users. That's just me and a couple of test users. Okay, well, this is a nice way of exploring your data from within Entra ID, but also you can see the permissions that you still need to consent on. And you could even show the code snippets that, well, I'm a PowerShell guy, so I'm not using you can also see the C#, Java or Python commandlets. But they used to be, and that's the whole thing that I ran into like a month ago. There used to be PowerShell snippets here, in which you could see how you could do the action that I just clicked by using a PowerShell script or commandlet to get that data. That's no longer here. It is still there if you love like Python. It is still there. You can see what kind of import you should do and the command that you could launch to do or to retrieve all your users with. I'm not a Python guy. I tried to use Python many times, but it has no use case for me. So that's one thing that I'm still not able to do. So there used to be like the PowerShell snippets over here, and there was also another tool in which showed you all the things that you could do with the graph interface, but then more in a debugger view. I'm not sure if people are already familiar with the Graph X-ray tool. It's like a plugin that you install in your browser, and when you run it in developer mode, this should open the developer console. So when you're inside of an admin center of Entra or Azure or Intune even, this plugin will show you all the Graph API calls that it does while you're operating it. So it's probably better to see when you're doing this in an Intune interface. Okay, now that you actually have a page in which it recognizes the graph commandlets behind it, you can see the Graph X-ray button in your developer console. And it even has an ultra X-ray option. That is, if it can't natively find the Graph API requests behind your admin center, it will still try to do its best to show any API call. So, for example, if I open something here like devices, You can see the graph requests rolling in the developer console while accessing certain parts of your management interface. And a nice thing that while it starts loading, it starts to group them by resources as well. So if you wanted to see the device management endpoints, usually there will be the PowerShell command that also in here, but since it's no longer being advertised from the backend, it just shows you the graph requests that you should use to access it. And if you scroll further down, you will see that it starts loading different endpoints to get all the information that is shown in the left pane. And this works for Intune. This also works for Entra admin portals, and basically anything that has some Graph API endpoint behind it. It was built by somebody who used to work at Microsoft, but no longer works at Microsoft. It's built by Merrill Fernando. And Merrill Fernando made a lot of great tools while working at Microsoft. And this is one that I have been using for 2 or 3 years now. And now that you know the actual graph endpoints that are being called, he still has his website with all the graph permissions on it. But that same website also shows you per graph endpoint what command that you should use, but also what permissions you should use. And that's the most important part. You can easily access the Graph API with way too many of too much permissions. Let's see if I can expand this. Devices read all, perhaps. So the left side shows you all the permissions that are possible. And this shows you all the API interfaces, but this also shows you what graph commands I should use to be able to access that same information. So if, for instance, I did the Microsoft Graph device endpoint, and if you click on that, it will redirect you to the correct Learn page from Microsoft and telling you all the information, all the parameters that you can actually supply in order to query everything. So that basically shows you from a permission level to a PowerShell commandlet level to the necessary Microsoft Learn information with that. And it does that for the normal interface. That's the interface that you probably should use. That's a normal endpoint, but you also have the beta endpoint. And the beta endpoint, because it's beta, it usually has a much bigger feature set. But you really can't depend on those features actually still being there. You have like the production one, that will always work. The beta one has more stuff in it, but that stuff could also be removed in future updates. So yes, it works. Should you use it? Maybe, but best would be to use the normal 1.0 endpoint instead of the beta endpoint. And the main difference between the commandlets is, you can see it, this is the MG beta device commandlet, and the normal 1.0 endpoint has a MG device. So you can actually see in the commandlet which endpoint you're accessing. In the past, you had to switch contacts. If that's something like connect context or set context either to 1.0 or beta. Those scripts are deprecated, and you should really update those if you still have those lying around.
I think this is what you're using daily, right? At customers.
Yeah, sometimes they have a need for a certain type of product or something Copilot, like the Copilot ones are also added for permissions. I don't know all the endpoints. I don't know what modules you should use for that. I can mostly guess based on experience. This really helps me determine what endpoint, what commandlets, what permissions. And also you have like a device read and a device read all in the example of querying devices. Sometimes device read is enough. You don't need to actually read all the attributes of a device. So that's the whole least privilege part, especially when you're using like app registrations in software. Having those run with way too many permissions, you could use them for things that
I can imagine,
you shouldn't.
It's not for a reason that we don't want to add too much permissions, right?
Yeah, and usually you think, well, if I just do the whole device read write all and connect like that, then I won't be bothered by any additional needed permissions. Yes, I might have done that when I first started using PowerShell years ago, but no, you shouldn't do that.
Exactly. If you look at the security point of view, I mean, least privilege, that's a known one. What are specific ones that you always recommend?
Especially for connecting, most scripts that I run them with certificate based. You can do it like the app secret thing. But I usually just create certificates and store them in key vaults or in my own local certificate store on Windows or Mac OS in the keychain. Using certificates with an expiration date of like a year or even less. It's much better than using interactive logon, unless you're using passkeys or YubiKeys, for example. But the easiest is to use certificates, self-signed or signed by your company, in which you can even like revoke those certificates. It's the best way of connecting, not hard coding all kinds of stuff in your scripts, just storing certificates in key vaults, not storing them in variables that you could even see in the logs. If you use runbooks, sometimes it shows way too much information in the log output of that. So yeah. And did I have another one? So now that I opened the Entra ID admin center, you can see that it starts loading the things from the
so basically, for each API, it's retrieving the commandlets, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's always the same commandlet, invoke mggraph request, but it shows you what it does. Get a patch, put, or whatever thing that you do, it will show it in the Graph X-ray debug output. Yeah. So you first like do the ClickOps thing in your admin center, and then you can process or read it from your Graph X-ray output, what endpoints it does, and from there on you start building your scripts so you know what endpoints, what permissions. And that's just me discovering how it works instead of using Claude or whatever, because I don't use that. Generated code, it's the biggest issue for me. When I get generated code from any either Cloud, Sonnet, or Gemini or whatever, it's always code that is very generic, and the people who actually created that code or use that code being created by tools like that, they don't know what it does completely. They kind of have an idea what it does, but yeah. And it can very well be a good assistant, but you actually need to know your code when running stuff instead of just copy pasting and hoping for the best while executing it. You have to put in the work to actually know how things work. But is that something that you see often as well?
Sometimes. It's not always. Mostly it's being used as the name implies, Copilot, just to verify, or when they are stuck in the code, but not copy paste blindly and then off you go.
Okay. It's more the assistant feature.
Yes.
And checking your homework, so to say, instead of completely generating from scratch. That's good. You also have the Microsoft Learn output of all the permissions and endpoints. You could put that in the show notes as well. Whenever I start this page, it's just one page from A to C. It's a very long page, so if your browser kind of freezes when you open it, just wait a little bit. It's a very long page, but it actually contains all the permissions with a good description of what it does. If it's an application permission or a delegated permission, that's more for setting up your app registrations, so you know what, and if you need an admin consent, yes or no. This is the most detailed output, but it's a very long, slowly scrollable page. But it has like everything in it. And while you could use the invoke mggraph request commandlets, with like the Microsoft Entra modules. If I could. So these are all the new Entra modules. These are kind of the replacement modules for like the Azure AD Preview, and MS Online modules that you were used to using. Those are all deprecated. Most of the stuff has been moved to the Microsoft Entra modules, like you see here. And those are a lot more. These are all the Microsoft Graph ones. So all the user things in Entra ID, that's where I use the Microsoft Entra modules for. And for all the more specific ones and for the 365 products, you use these. You could even use these for the Exchange Online management module also has. These are also present in the Microsoft Graph ones. So this is what you should always have on your development machine, I guess.
And do you see them being updated frequently, or is it just once in a quarter?
It's monthly, bi-monthly, and usually in a week after that there's a patched one because there was some error in one of the modules. The last one that came out almost immediately got an update again because the application module wasn't working correctly, for example. So that happens, but they are updated pretty regularly. The Graph ones more than the Entra ones, but yeah. So it's always a good thing to keep your modules up to date because stuff might have been broken in the previous ones or will break in the ones that you just updated to. So always test and verify before updating this in the larger environments. And if you use only the invoke empty graph request ones, accessing the endpoints yourself, not using the modules, then it's much easier. You don't need to update your modules, but you have to script more in order to get things working. I really like the graph modules. They make my life a lot easier without having to create the whole script with the whole invocation part with all the calls in it. This is a lot easier, especially when you're starting out. Basically how I use graph interfaces and discover permissions, endpoints, those kind of things. Best practice wise, it's more a matter of security layers and how you authenticate to it. Other things that I usually forget, just disconnect your graph sessions when you're done. It happens to me all the time. I start a new console and I'm suddenly still in the previous customer's environment. You just disconnect your session.
If I'm new to this topic, any thoughts like getting started here?
Yeah. If you have the possibility to start a customer experience tenant, like a CDX tenant, that's still a thing. If you're a Microsoft partner, you can start those things if you have a Visual Studio subscription. Just play around in your own tenant. Makes more sense than doing it in production, obviously, but it's a safe way of getting to know how Graph works, how the Entra modules work.
At least it's a safe playground, right?
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's especially the CDX ones. They usually, or you could deploy those with actual data and users in it, instead of you having to create a lot of demo accounts, mailboxes, whatever. It's a pre-provisioned tenant with actual data in it. That makes your life a lot easier. Also for giving customer presentations, but also for testing. So if you have possibilities,
I will put it under the description below. Harm, I want to thank you very much for your explanation, also for your demonstration. I think it's a very useful tool when you're discovering which API graph you have to use. Also with the documentation, it's very awesome to see that, and which permissions you're basically touching upon, which is sometimes a little of a hassle discovering into the Microsoft Docs. And tools like this one is very helpful in finding the missing puzzle piece. Any last thoughts that you want to share?
well, the most important thing, if you have like meetup events, if you go to those, there are a lot of ones talking about automation and these kind of things. Join community events. That's all I wanted to say. I can even, we have the Dutch PowerShell user group, obviously. So if you're into PowerShell, see if you can join an event of that. There are many around security, Entra, anything 365. Look them up on the Meetup platform.
We will add the link below. For everybody at home, I want to thank you for your time, also for listening. If you have any thoughts or ideas, please leave them below. And Otherwise, I would say take care until next time.